Guys, Brett Weiss here. Thank you so much for tuning in to another video. If you're new to the channel, please hit that subscribe button. Much appreciated. So today we are with Patrick Hickey Jr., a Brooklyn native, an author, voice actor, journalist, college professor, father of two, just friend of mine. What else are you, Patrick? Introduce yourself.
That's the hardest part, being your friend.
That's
You know,
painful.
it is. But you have your moments. You're an amazing man, Brett Weiss. Um,
Well, thank you.
I'm, you're welcome. I'm also a voice actor. I've done some voice work on several video games, probably about three or four more in 2021. I've done some writing in video games. I'm writing for a couple of games right now that I can't discuss because of NDA. But for the most part, I feel like my job is to help preserve the legacy of video game history by telling the behind-the-scenes stories of as many games as possible. And that's a journey that partially started because of Brett Weiss over here.
Hey. Well, hey, I
Absolutely.
have I have two of your books,
Nice.
including one that I wrote the forward to, The Minds Behind the Games, your
Mhm.
first book.
Yep. Oh, it feels like such a long time ago, but it really, like in the big scheme of things, it wasn't. It's like
All right, so
crazy.
let's tell the story leading up to this book. So you've been on a lot of podcasts and YouTube videos and all that lately, but I want to go focus somewhere different.
Okay.
Let's go back to the beginning, the first time you ever discovered video games, your first just like your first awareness that video games were a thing.
It was probably either ice hockey for NES or RBI baseball. We definitely had Mario Brothers and Super Mario Brothers, not Mario Brothers, two different
Yes,
games.
please get it right.
Yes. No SNES. I watch your videos. I know. So we definitely had Super Mario Brothers Duck Hunt, but you know, ice hockey was awesome. And RBI baseball, to be able to play a baseball game with real players, to me, just like totally, like it was like a brain busting moment. I absolutely adored that game. And then those memories just got scaffolded, and that was the foundation. And it's just like every console, I wanted a new sports game, and it was hockey. It was either hockey or baseball, and then both. And then I got into Madden on the Genesis, and then the PlayStation was just like NFL Game Day, NHL Face Off, NBA Shootout, and it's just like it just compounded. Then I discovered somewhere along those ways like Legend of Zelda, Final Fantasy, Breath of Fire,
Right.
um, Fallout, Diablo. So it's just, yeah. But if it wasn't for those arcade style sports games, I probably wouldn't be here today.
So those first few games you remember were on the NES. Was that in your parent like at home with your parents and your brother? You have a brother, right?
Yeah, I have a twin brother.
Twin brother. Now, how come we never see him on your Facebook posts? Where is this
because
guy?
because he's like Kramer from Seinfeld. Nobody knows. Nobody knows where he is. Like, falls ass first into money. Men, women, goats. They all love him. Like he's like half Hunter S. Thompson, half Cosmo Kramer. Like he's a vagabond. Like he's
Wow,
probably
that's
got
cool.
like a mop handle and like a sack somewhere right now. Like he's probably had
Wow.
COVID like four times. Like he's a
Real free
maniac.
spirit, huh?
He's a nut. He's crazy. Like I remember one time he told me a story that he went to a Lady Gaga concert, and then like after he waited for her outside and like walked over and just like kissed her, and I'm just like he's literally out of his mind, like, but he's like the life of the party. People
I was
people
about to
love it.
say that sounds like a guy I could hang with. He sounds like
He's
fun.
he's insane. Yeah. So
Okay, so how old were you when you guys had this NES and you're remembering these first games?
3, 4 years old. Yeah.
Right. And
This
these
is
were
like
different.
this is like
So as far as you knew,
1986,
video games
1987.
always existed for you at this age.
Always existed. I mean, it's part of the reason why I learned how to read like so early. As a kid, like before I started kindergarten, I already knew how to read because I used to watch my father play Legend of Zelda and
Oh, that
Wonder
is
Boy
awesome.
and things like that. So world was probably like one of the first words I ever learned how to read because like in every game you were in a world.
Right.
And baseball players' names. And but I mean I grew up in a different time. I used to buy baseball cards. I used to buy comic books. I mean, I learned how to read what's Amazing Spider-Man too, and it was just like inferring what was on the page, and then my dad would tell me, no, that's not what J. Jonah Jameson said. Yeah, he's mad, but he said this, and I'm like, well, what word is that? And then all of a sudden, you're 4 or 5 years old and you're reading Amazing Spider-Man. So
Hey, comics, I mean, they're definitely literary tools. A lot of people
love them.
just think they're garbage, especially back in the 70s and 80s when I grew up, but
Hmm.
they're definitely I mean, I learned I remember reading Incredible Hulk and the word outre, which means strange. And I
Mhm.
run across this word as a kid, and I'm like, I just learned a new word because I looked, I
Yep,
was one of these kids that had to look stuff up to find out what it was. So
absolutely.
that is awesome. So what types of game now in my SNES books and my forthcoming NES book, you've written some stories and you talk about your parents being gamers. Now apparently they were pretty competitive.
Oh yeah, it's like they would wait for us to go to sleep, and they would play games like Super Bowling and Mario All Stars, and my mom and dad they used to like to buy like the weirdest controllers. It's like for Genesis and Super Nintendo, they would buy like the cheapest third party controllers that they could find, but that had like slow motion and like ultra turbo and stuff. And my dad and my mom would play like Street Fighter, and my dad would be like E Honda and just ba 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 ba, and my mom would be like Blanca and just electrocuting. And they would just my brother and I would be in bed and we would hear them yelling at each other, like having fun, obviously,
Right.
but but they would play Side Pocket, Vegas Stakes, Vegas Dreams, like Monopoly. Uh, they used to play a lot, like when we went to bed. And when I got older, they didn't play as much. But like by the time we got to the PlayStation,
Right.
my mom still played. She liked Crash Bandicoot a lot. And my dad tried to get into like Black Dawn and like Soviet Strike and stuff like that. But my dad was basically a Genesis Super Nintendo guy. So my
That's
mom adapted. We got a Wii eventually. My mom used to play Wii Sports all the time. So
well, that's great. Wii
yeah.
Sports, the greatest pack-in console game ever, in my
Mhm.
opinion, and
Absolutely.
the most, just it's so ubiquitous, and everybody, parents, kids,
Hmm.
grandparents, even nursing homes, everybody loved Wii Sports. Now, your experience was the opposite of mine. My parents had zero interest in video games, no
Hmm.
interest whatsoever.
Yeah.
And my brother a little bit. Well, at the arcades, my brother did. So I wanted to talk to you about the arcades.
Yeah.
My brother and I were both arcade rats. He didn't care about console gaming too much, but man, Sunday nights, every Sunday night we went to the arcades, and Saturdays we went to the mall. Sunday night was Malibu Grand Prix. What was the arcade scene like in Brooklyn? Or just how old were you when you started going to the arcades? What is your arcade experiences growing up?
I mean, see, the thing is, there was Funtime USA in Brooklyn, which was a pretty big arcade. There was Chuck E. Cheese in Staten Island, which is, car drive away. There was an arcade in Bay Parkway called More Fun, and that was the arcade that everybody went to. They had like 20 pinball machines. They had X-Men. They had Turtles in Time. That was like the arcade that you went to. Um, that place was great. But the thing was, like every grocery store in Brooklyn in the 80s and the 90s, back in the day, had some type of arcade cabinet. Like you never knew what you were gonna get. It was great. So it was like you would go into a grocery store and they would all have like the spindle of comics and you didn't know what you were gonna get. Maybe it was a DC store, maybe it was a Marvel store, maybe it was a Valiant store. When Image came out, maybe they had a little Image section, but they always, all the way in the back, had an arcade machine. And it was like the nicer the neighborhood, the better the machine that they had. But I used to
Right.
love to go into like these really dingy neighborhoods and play like the SNK games. They would have like Samurai Showdown, and they would have all like these weird SNK games that like I couldn't find anywhere else. Or like laundromats. Oh my God, laundromats always had pinball machines. That's where I used to play off-road, and they had the steering wheel on there. But
Now,
one day,
did you go to the laundromats with your mom who was doing or dad who was doing laundry,
yep.
or was it just okay? Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, it was just like, I got dragged to the laundromat to help my mom, and then just like, give me $1. Like,
I
I'm
had to
gonna
throw in
kill
dad
some
there to
time.
be politically correct.
Yeah, that's all right. But
So while you're
but yeah, it
waiting
was
for the laundry, you can play games. That's awesome.
yeah, yeah, and they had I'll never forget it. I want it. One day I will have it. They had a Return of the Jedi pinball machine with like Leia in the bikini across, and it was just like the coolest pinball machine. The multi-ball on it was so much fun. So yeah, there wasn't that many arcades, but it was just like going to all of these places. Like this place 2 blocks away from my house, it's actually like 4 blocks away from where I live now, was a 24-hour grocery store, and they had Turtles in Time.
Oh,
And
great stuff. Yeah.
and I'll never forget. Like I remember my parents, they got in a really bad fight, like
Uh-oh.
a really bad argument, and we were going to. I was young at the time, so I really didn't know what was going on, but we were going to stay over my uncle's for the weekend for like everybody to kind of like cool off.
Now, is this the
So
same uncle your dad worked with?
no, this is another uncle.
Oh, okay.
So this uncle was cool too because this uncle had like 5,000 like CDs, cassettes. Like you would go into his room and he just had tons of stuff like music. Oh, he used to make me mixtapes on cassette back in the day. He was like the best uncle.
That's
Um,
awesome.
so we went to the grocery store like 3 blocks away from the house to for him to pick us up and stuff. And my mom was really upset and it was just like, here's 50 cents, play Turtles in Time. And I haven't forgotten it because like my uncle had came and he was like, all right, let's go. And I'm like, I got like 3 lives left. I ain't going anywhere. And my mother was like, get in the car, get in the car. It was just like all of those grocery stores, they all had their own games. So it was really cool back in the day.
Yeah.
Now I mean, you never see an arcade cabinet somewhere. So
Yeah, I mean, growing up in the '80s, it was similar to your situation where I always saw arcades in the grocery stores. I mean, Walmart, Treasure City. There was a Treasure City that we would go to that had Gorf in it, out front.
wow. Yes.
Amazing. The first time I ever heard voice effects on a game that I recall. Maybe Berserk before that, but those two anyway. But yeah, it was so cool back. Arcades were everywhere. I remember going to a Dallas Mavericks game in the early '80s, and there were arcade games around the concourse of the stadium.
Wow. Those are like Rolando Blackman times, right? He
Money.
he went to my high school.
Did
He
he really?
graduated from my high school. Yeah,
Ro
William E. Grady
Blackman
High
was
School.
money.
Yep.
That is
Crazy.
awesome.
Hmm.
So in the school, I guess they had some kind of tribute to him, like in the showcase or anything.
No, I just found out. I just did research.
Oh, okay. Well, you are a
There's like,
journalist,
yes, even back then,
right?
I was always nosy, and I always wanted to find stuff out. And it's just like I remember when I started going to the college that I teach at now as a student, I was kind of like, who graduated from here? And I found out that like Andrew Dice Clay went to my
Wow.
college, and yeah, it was pretty. And Pete Falcone that used to play for the Mets, and Ray Palacios used to play for the Royals, so it was kind of like, all right, so I'm gonna be cooler than them. So
You know what's crazy is Andrew Dice Clay has transitioned into just a really, really good actor. He was an over the top, insane comedian, and I'm sure he still is. But he's been in some films I've seen where he's actually excellent.
what was the movie he was in with Terry Hatcher? Oh my God, I can't remember. It was a
I,
long time ago. It
I
was
saw
like
a
25
Woody
years
Allen
ago.
movie a couple of years ago, and then he was in wasn't he in anyway? He's
Yeah.
a, we won't get bogged down on that. He's a
Uh-huh.
terrific actor,
Oh
crazy.
yeah, absolutely. People surprise you sometimes.
All right, so let's get to your journalism career. So, did
Yeah.
you, from a young age, want to be a journalist, or did you just kind of, how did that come about?
I was always writing.
Mhm.
Um, I, I was always reading, like I said, baseball cards, baseball almanacs, hockey almanacs,
Right.
football almanacs. Like I just love sports history, and I started reading wrestling magazines. I started reading Game Pros, Electronic Gaming Monthly. Like I would just read whatever. Like every Saturday, my parents would take us to the library, and that was like heaven for me. My brother would scream bloody murder, like, no, why the library? And I would love it. I read biographies on Ty Cobb and Babe Ruth, and oh, I loved it. Wayne Gretzky.
Yeah.
Um, so I was always a reader, but I'm a big guy, so I'm 6'4", and I was an athlete. It wasn't until I was about 18 I got in a car accident and I messed up my back and my neck. And the original plan was to take a year off after I graduated from high school and then try and apply to like some colleges upstate and try and walk on to like a Division 3 hockey program. That was my that
So
was
you
my
played
plan.
hockey all through school, at high school, and everything.
Well, my high school didn't have a hockey team,
Oh,
so
okay.
I played every day.
Yeah.
Um, I played roller hockey every day. I was like the biggest, meanest kid in my neighborhood. You know, um,
So
but I
speaking of mean neighborhoods, Brooklyn was it pretty, pretty
oh yeah.
hardcore growing
Oh
up there?
yeah, Bensonhurst. I mean, that's where all like the mafia movies take place.
Right.
Like Goodfellas and all that stuff. Like it was all Italian and Irish and Puerto Rican and stuff like that. And it was bad.
Yeah.
It was like if you knew how to take care of yourself, you were fine. But I mean, if we put like somebody from, Florida in Brooklyn in 1988, 1989, they they wouldn't know what to do.
It wouldn't survive.
They would survive. Um, so
So
it made it.
your injury made you shift course.
Yep. And then so I was 18 when that happened. Um, And then what happened was for like 2 years I was in bands. I wrote a lot of crappy poetry. I made a nice amount of money from the accident, and I was on workers' compensation because I got hurt while I was working.
Hmm.
Um, so I got to travel. I did a lot of cool stuff. I used to go to the comic book store like once a week, the video game store once a week. Like it was just I amassed like a massive collection of comic books and video games, and I just had a lot of fun. And I discovered myself because I didn't have a lot of money as a kid either,
Yeah.
so being able to buy an Atari 2600 Junior and just say, you know what, I'm gonna buy like 50 games and just fuck around with this thing and see what happens. Like I would do stuff like that.
Mm.
Or oh, you know what, I'm gonna buy like the Marvel like essentials that were
Mhm.
like $15 in black and white. I'm gonna
Yeah.
buy like every Spider-Man volume. Like they had like
Right.
10. So I'm like, oh, that's like $150. So I can read every single Spider-Man for $150. And this is like 2002, 2003. So it's like the
Right.
internet isn't like hardcore yet. So like I ended up filling bookshelves in my room. So eventually it got to the point, I'll never forget it. It was like 4 o'clock in the morning, and I'm watching like Batman the animated series like on my computer, and playing PlayStation 2. And my dad comes into my room and he's like, "What the fuck are you doing?" And I'm like, "What do you think it is I'm doing? I'm playing video games. I'm hanging out." Like he's like, "No, no, no, like with your life." I'm like, "I don't know." I'm like, "I don't know." I'm like, "I'm 20. Like I'm not supposed to know
I'll
yet."
figure that out later.
Yeah. And he's just like, well, you better figure shit out soon because you're not going to stay here much longer. And I was kind of like, yeah, okay. All right. So the next day I applied to Kingsborough, and like a week later I was there, and I ended up sitting down, unbeknownst to me, the head of the journalism program, and we ended up having like a 10-15 minute conversation. And he's like, I think you'd be a great like journalism student. And within like a semester I was editor in chief of the school newspaper. I had one excellent professor while I was there. His name was Brian McDonald. He used to cover gang warfare for the New York Post. Like these gangs were like trying to kill him at one point. He's written a couple of really good books. One's My Father's Gun. It's about like having a family of like cops and like the gun being passed down from generation to generation. But he also wrote a book on Louis Sock Alexis, who was basically the first minority baseball player. He only played 2 seasons in the major leagues um, with the Cleveland team. So they basically named the Indians after him. So it's a true story. Amazing player. This is like 60 years before Jackie Robinson was even, a thing. Great book. And he helped guide me a lot while I was there. And then I just took over from there. I started doing a lot of sports journalism. I interviewed David Wright when he was on the Mets during his first full season. Started interviewing a lot of professional wrestlers, a lot of voice actors, and it just kind of scaffolded. I went to another college, did the same thing. Then I graduate school, NBC, Examiner, Review. I started Review Fix. So it's kind of
You
like,
recall what your first gaming related writing was?
yes, yes, I will never forget my first gaming. So I reviewed Madden 2005 on the Game Boy Advance.
Hmm.
That was my first writing.
And
Like,
what outlet was this for?
this was for Scepter newspaper. This was for Kingsborough's student newspaper.
And
That
they
was
wanted a Game Boy Advance review, or was that your choice?
Yeah, well, see, this was the thing. It was I was speaking to the editor in chief at the time, and I'm like, real critics. I was such an asshole. Oh my god. I was like, real critics don't pay for games. I'm like, so it's unprofessional for me to review a game that I've purchased with my own money because it's impossible for me to be unbiased, which is true. I agree. But it was a little rinky dink community college newspaper, and he's like, well, if you've bought anything lately, why don't you just review that? And it was just like Madden had just come out, and I bought it for Game Boy Advance because I wanted to play something on the way back and forth to school.
Yeah.
So I was like, this would be great because, sure, everyone else is gonna want to know how Madden 2005 is for PS2 and Xbox and stuff, but we'll be the only college newspaper that has the Game Boy Advance review. Like I was such an idiot. But it ended up being a pretty cool experience. And then through
Yeah.
that, I started doing interviews and started doing like real reporting for them. I became editor in chief of that paper and started working for college news, for local newspapers covering the Brooklyn Cyclones, the Mets minor league affiliate, like a year later. And yeah, that's kind of how it all started.
So, do you have any advice for aspiring writers? It's a different market today, and it's tough to really make a living writing.
Mhm.
Whether someone wants to make a living writing or just do it sort of part time as a side hustle, or just for the art of it. Do you have any advice?
Don't stop. Um, that's probably the best advice that I could give.
Well,
Don't
I
stop.
call you the Terminator and the machine, the
Yeah.
machine. Because when you've written for my books, a day later you'll have three, stories for my books, and
But yeah, well, because you know what it
you're
is
at it all
too.
the time.
Um, Brian McDonald, my journalism professor when I first started, used to scream at my entire class because no one would make deadlines except for me. And he would be like, this is the only guy in the entire class that's making deadlines. If you don't make your deadlines, you don't fucking eat, and blah blah blah. And I'm just like, wow. And that stuck with me. So we're talking 16 years later from that class. I've never missed a deadline in my entire life. Like I remember, like people passing away in my family and having articles due and just staying up late and making sure that I got stuff done. And because at the end of the day, more people want to read your work, and like something happening in your family, yeah, that sucks, but it's not a reason to not do what you said that you were going to do. Like your word is extremely important as a writer, like your morality, your ethics, those things are super important. So like advice would be don't stop. I've seen so many people in journalism, I'm going to get in trouble for saying this, but I've seen it a lot in journalism. I've seen it in the video game industry, certainly. I've seen it in academia because I've been a college professor for, for 14 and a half years now. I've seen so many people fail forward, meaning just sticking around, doing the bare minimum of work, and then just waiting for an opportunity. And when the opportunity comes, then they take it. And see, I can't do that. My style is if somebody says, Pat, can you do this? I do it the next day. I do it the same day to show them that I'm going to bust my ass for you. So whatever my name is on, I want you to bust your ass too. So
Right.
I don't make a lot of friends because of that. I don't. I mean, I'm going to be totally honest.
Well,
Some people
as a
hate it.
journalist, you got to be kind of hard nosed anyway.
Yeah. But the people that do like it, like, I mean, I didn't know you from a hole in the wall, and I asked you to write the foreword to my book. You didn't know me from a hole in the wall, and we trusted each other, and we've worked together for the past couple of years. And I like to think that the stuff that has both of our names on is pretty freaking solid, you know? So that's kind of like, that would be my advice. Like, stand by the things that you do, be able to work with other people, work hard, sleep a little less, send tons of pitches, refine your pitches, know who your audience is, write to an audience, don't write for yourself, be selfless. um yeah, that would be some of my advice. Also, have another job. It's super hard. Like I remember when NBC offered me a full-time job. I had the college that I work at now, that I have tenure and I have a pension and I have this wonderful, career there. They offered me a full-time job too, and I just looked at the two and I was just like, when I worked at NBC, it was like they owned me. Thanksgivings, Christmases, New Year's Eves and stuff, birthdays. I mean, I remember having to sneak my wife up to 30 Rock on my 30th birthday just so we could have like a piece of cake together. And then the Trayvon Martin case broke. Like the verdict came in and she saw me like on the phone going crazy and stuff. And one of the most fun moments and periods of my life working at NBC, but it was just like being able to do that for another 40, 50 years, that probably would have taken some years off of my life. So I love the fact that I could teach 4 days a week and work extremely hard during those 4 days and answer emails from my students at all times of the day and answer all of their questions and stuff, but then still have enough time to be a husband, a father, and to do this, write these books and do voiceover and stuff. So it's like the best of both worlds. So my advice would be is you've got to find like your center. You've got to find that spot where you could be the most productive, and then just stay in there as long as you can be and just be like a pillar of consistency.
Excellent stuff. So your publisher, speaking of your books, is McFarland Publishers,
Mm-hmm.
and they publish some of my books as well. What has it been like working with them?
It's gotten better over time. Um, they're the first publisher that I've ever worked with, like for a book. I mean, I've been published in a whole bunch of magazines and a whole bunch of newspapers, and I mean, oh my God, I could tell you stories about writing for some local newspapers in Brooklyn. Like there was a paper called the Bay Currents, and the guy still owes me like $2,000 still to this day. And like every once in a while, I'll see like a profile on LinkedIn and I'll message him and I'll be like, bro, where's my money? Like I feel like I have to be like Sly Stallone in Rocky, like bouncing the handball with like the leather gloves on and stuff like that. And it's
Right.
just there were so many times when I had to go to people's offices and just not beg, but like demand that I be paid. Um, that's obviously not the case when you write a book, which is awesome. It's like you get the check in the mail like twice a year, but then sometimes there's that, oh my God, I didn't sell as many books as I thought I did, or oh wow, you're surprised. I mean, it's you know this better than anybody. It's not easy. It's hard.
Right.
I like that they've consistently as the books have gone on, listened to me more. There's more pictures in the Minds Behind the Shooter games than than there are in probably the first 2 books put together. Um, we spent a lot more time back and forth editing, which is what I wanted. I want to speak to people during the writing process. I don't want to be writing in a vacuum.
Right.
Um, and I don't want to necessarily reach out to other authors and be like, "Oh, can you look at my stuff?" It's like I pay you technically. I mean, I don't pay you, but you're taking, what, a ton of what I make
Right.
to make sure that I look good. So it's kind of like in the beginning, I had some assumptions on the way book publishing worked, and luckily I had somebody like you and like Leonard Herman and a couple of other people letting me know like how things would be different from what I expected. But I think now I'm in a really good situation with McFarlane. I'm always exploring other opportunities for other things. I mean, you'd be crazy not to, you know. If another opportunity came along, I would totally consider it. That's just the way it is, you know. It's like I would love to be like Derek Jeter and just spend my entire career with one place, but when you've got a family and you've got priorities and things like that, you've got to always keep your options open. But like I'd like to say that like throughout this entire process, they've gotten better every single book. So like the edits that I got back for the shooter book were awesome. Um, and the suggestions that they had for things. And the cover for the shooter book is awesome. It's exactly what I wanted. There's a bullseye on it. There's freaking bullet holes on it. Like
Cool.
I wanted it. Yeah, I wanted it to be sexy. Because the thing is too, it's like I'm writing academic, like for an academic nonfiction publisher, but
Mhm.
I'm writing in a commercial way, in a commercial journalistic way. I'm not writing for scholars. I'm writing for that 15-year-old kid that comes into the video game store that's like a little nerdy and reads the instruction manuals, or like people like us that grew up and want to know the behind the scenes story. So I'm not most academics write to get promoted. They don't write to be read, you know?
Mhm.
So writing for an academic publisher and then wanting to be read, it's hard,
Yeah.
but we're getting there. I mean, COVID COVID has been amazing in terms of like I've had so many people reach out to me on Instagram and Twitter that are like, "What are you all about?" Da, 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 da. And it's been more people are reading now I think than have in a long time.
Yeah.
And so to answer your question, they've gotten consistently better, and I think now is a super exciting time to be an author that's working because there's so many authors out there that are like, "Oh, I can't write right now. I can't be creative right now." And I'm just like, "Why? Why would you not want to write right now?" You know?
Mhm.
So,
Well, a lot of people are reading, and a lot of people are gaming too, because
mhm.
they're at home more. And I've saw that prices for things like the Wii Sports, for the remotes, for the multiplayer games, for just used Switches and used PS4s are in high demand and that kind of thing. So COVID has done some interesting things to the gaming industry. All right, we
Absolutely.
are getting down to it. So you have 4 Minds Behind the Games books so far, and I believe you said
6.
you've got 6 mapped. You've got 2 more mapped out.
Well, the 5th is finished,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm just waiting to send it in. And then the 6th is basically like 90% finished already. So, it's yeah. COVID, like I said, man, being able to be home and write more has done crazy things. So the thing is, I mean, the first book came out in April of 2018.
Mm-hmm.
So now the second book came out in December of 2019, and the third book just came out like at the first week of September. So now the shooter book is probably going to come out in like December. 4 books in like 2.5 years. That's a lot.
That for someone that actually writes and
You know?
really puts out a good product, and with a
Yeah.
lot of text and a lot of research and
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah.
That's a lot. That's a lot
Because I
of
mean,
books.
all of these books are over 100,000 words. You know, it's
Mhm.
like, and listen, I don't want to talk shit about people, even though you know that I like to, Brett. You know, I do that a lot
Yeah.
with you.
On
But
Brett's channel, we'll keep it name free. We'll
yes,
just
we'll keep it name free. But there's so many books out there that are coffee table based that are just like the writers call themselves minimalists, and like the entire book is more pictures than text. You know, like you've got books that have like 700 pictures in it, and if you counted the words, it'd probably be like 20,000, and I could write 20,000 words in a day if I really wanted to. So it's like I don't want to flood the market with all of my stuff because I mean, perfect example today, like I had 4 people buy the first book and I was just like, well, to be honest, the sports book just came out, and I think that's my best work so far. And they're like, yeah, let me start from the very beginning though. Like, let me, so it's like the first book is still doing well. So that's why, like, the Genesis, the Minds Behind the Sega Genesis book, is completely finished. It's been edited. I'm ready to submit it to the publisher, but I'm just like, you know what? It's not due for a couple of months, so I'm gonna wait until it's completely due, and maybe I'll edit it another 1 or 2 times and really like super tighten it up. Um, and then the PlayStation book, I mean, I've got 37 chapters written already. The first book was only 36 chapters. So, I mean, God forbid, like if I die right now, I'll tell on my deathbed, I will tell my wife, email the manuscript to Brett. Tell him to
I've
submit
wondered that
to
before too.
McFarlane.
I had a book almost finished and something happened to me, and I'm like, I sure hope like my wife will. She's smart.
Yeah.
She'll
Oh
get
yeah.
it. She'll figure out a way to finish it up, or have someone, a knowledgeable gamer finish it up and
Yeah.
get it out there. That's my one fear.
So I'm sorry that I cut you off, but yeah. So far, yeah, there's 6 books. And the contracts have been signed for those 6 books, so they're all going to be a reality at some point.
So, do you ever see doing another type of book that doesn't have anything to do with the developers of games? Or are you going to stay on this for the foreseeable future?
Well, see, the thing is, they're selling. So I mean,
Yeah.
and I'm having so much fun doing it. I love doing it. I
And you're
wanted to write.
uncovering new information.
Yeah,
That you're getting stories out of people that haven't had their stories out there before.
absolutely. It's like I'll meet somebody and they'll start talking to me, and I'll go, give me 1 second, and I'll go on my phone and I'll start looking online, and I'm just like, this is nowhere online. Like, gotta tell the
Right.
story.
Yeah.
So it's like until I start hitting a rut and feeling like there's not a lot of stories left to tell, then I mean, I can see myself like right now I'm doing basically a book a year. The way it is right now, like a book released a year. Um, and I think I'd like to continue doing that for the foreseeable future. However, I originally, after the first book came out, I was going to do a wrestling book where I was going to do the same exact thing, but I would interview professional wrestlers and have them talk about their lives in wrestling and things like that. And that's something that I definitely want to do at some point. I definitely want to write a hockey book at some point. I used to have a column for Review Fix called Behind the Song, where I would talk to people about like one of the songs in their library. And I ended up talking to some amazing people, like Don Felder from the Eagles,
Nice.
about how he wrote the guitar, the whole the whole music for Hotel California.
Mhm.
Um, tons of like, but the thing is, this, like McFarlane wants releases from everybody. So it's like that book probably wouldn't be a McFarlane book because I'm not going to go to people that I've interviewed like 7, 8 years ago and ask for a release. They probably won't even remember me. Don Felder has no reason to remember
Right.
me. So I might have to
How
go
about
through.
like a written release? What
Yeah.
you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, that's definitely something that I would want to do at some point. Like tons of great interviews, like people from like Incubus and Korn and the Eagles, like the whole gamut. John Waite, I talked to him about like Missing You, like crazy. Like
That's
it would
awesome.
be,
Yeah.
yeah, that would be so much fun to do something like that. So yeah, like I've been trying very hard the past like year and a half to take care of myself because I remember when I was like 20, I'm like I could live until I'm 45 and then I'll go like the Hemingway route. Like I don't need to get old and shit. Like what's that all about? And now it's like I started doing all this stuff and had kids and I'm like I need to be a Highlander. I need to live forever. There's
Right.
so much stuff I want to do. So yeah, to answer your question, definitely want to do a music book. Definitely want to do a hockey book one day. Definitely want to do a wrestling book. There's something on I think it's on your Facebook page, and it's like author of like over 10 books, and that's like the sexiest thing I've ever seen in my life. Like author of over 10 books, and I'm just like, I want to do that. I want to have
Now
10
it's
books.
11 with the
Yeah, look
NES
at you.
Omnibus.
You're good, yo.
And book number 12, NES Omnibus Volume 2, is at the publisher, just waiting for the proofs.
I just want to say too, man, like what you do is so awesome and so cool, and how do I say? The arcade, the book that you put out with the short stories,
Yeah.
that showed me another side of you because like your video game stuff is super tight. It's written so tight, concise, sharp, but it's like your your fiction. It's still written that way, but it's figurative. Like there's a lot of other stuff going on.
Metaphor and all kinds of crazy
Yeah,
stuff.
and I'm just like I want to see one day what Brett Weiss does like with that stuff. Like I think one day you got a comic book in you or something like that, you know? So
Well,
I just
people
want
are
to
telling
thank
me
you.
they want me to. They think I should do another book of short stories, and I
Yeah.
just, with having to pay the bills and everything, I just
Yeah.
haven't been able to get to it. I would love to do that.
So I just want, I want to thank you just for being a mentor. Like just like kind of like showing the way a bit, like, having the foresight to do like what you've done. Like your books for McFarlane are like years ahead of their time. And
Thank
then
you.
that 1977 to 1987 book, like I remember sitting down in my house. I got a review copy from your publisher, and I was eating like a sleeve of Oreos with a glass of milk, and I'm just flipping through. Oh shit, that game looks good. Oh shit, that game looks good. And then I'm just like, this is really good. I'm like, I gotta reach out to this guy. And then I messaged you, and then you did the Kiss book, and I'm a huge Kiss fan. I love Kiss. And then I'll never forget, like I had a conversation with my boss, and my wife was pregnant, and I'm like, I need to do something that I'm proud of before my kid is born. And I really wanted it to be building the program, building the journalism program at Kingsborough. And my boss was just like, he had tenure already. He's just like, yeah, nah. So I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna go write a book. And he's like, yeah, go write a book, kid. And I remember sitting in my man cave, looking at all of my games, and your book was like right there, and I'm just like, I could do this. And I'm like, I can't do it like Brett. Brett's got his own style. He does what he does. I'm like, but I love to interview people. I'm like, I could do like an interview anthology. I'm like, yeah. And I start pulling out games and then start sending pitches, and the rest is history. But if your book isn't on that shelf next to those games, I don't know. Might not happen. You know? It's crazy. It's crazy
Well,
the
thank
way
you
the
for
world
that. I'm
works
glad you
sometimes.
discovered that book. That's that
Love
that
that book.
book, The 100 Greatest Console Games. That's people always tell me that they enjoy that. That's been my best-selling book, and people seem to really like it. So I appreciate that.
It's the best of both worlds. Like it's a coffee table book by design kind of, but there's real writing in it. And you
Mm-hmm.
really break down the game. So it's like to like the layman, they'll go, "Oh, this is cool. I could put this like in my man cave on a shelf. It looks really pretty. Oh, there's a lot of pictures and stuff." But if you sit down and you actually read it, you're like, "Oh shit. Oh. Oh, like you get into how the game plays, the impact of the game, the context, you create context. So you're able to do a lot in a small amount of space. Like for each game, it's great. It's a great book.
Well, I
So
grew up with that stuff, so it kind of came natural. But I appreciate that. So, guys, thank you so much for watching this interview with a Texan and a Brooklyn guy. Somehow we became friends. Lots in common, a lot of the same interests. I grew up watching the Mavericks and Cowboys, just like you grew up watching your New York teams, and I'm into comics, obviously games and all that stuff too. So, no doubt, obvious why we became friends. Appreciate you being on. Tell everyone where they can find you. Where can they get the Minds Behind the Games books? Where can they find your voice work? All that good stuff.
So the Minds Behind the Games books are available wherever fine books are sold digitally. So like, Barnes and Noble, Amazon, Target, Walmart, Books a Million, Indigo, Thrift Books, like all basically anywhere that you want to buy a book, you can get it there. Um, there's tons of third-party sellers too on all of those places selling them. But the best place to buy the Minds Behind the Games is patrickhickeyjr.com/books, because what'll happen is you will buy directly through me, and I will sign your book. I'll put my Walter Day card in there. I'll sign it. I'll throw, like, if Brett decides one day that he wants to buy a book, I will find Dallas Mavericks cards and I will put them in his book. Like I had Jeff Gabor, who's an amazing animator. He's worked on not BioShock Infinite. He's worked on Ice Age. He's worked on the Peanuts movie, Spies in Disguise. He's amazing. He's from Denver. He grew up as a Broncos fan. So he bought like the adventure book, and I put a Carl Mecklenburg and like an Elway in his book, and he sends me a picture of like the Mecklenburg, and he's like, "Dude, how did you know?" I'm like, "I didn't." I'm like, "He was a good player." So I figured if I'm not gonna give you like a scrub or anything. He goes, "No." He goes, "I used to play Madden 2001." And he's like, Mecklenburg retired in like 94, but I would make him and put him in the game because they had no like linebacker that was as good as him. So he's like, every time I look at your book, he goes, I'm going to have that card in there. He goes, so that's what I want. Because, I mean, you know this. Meeting people at conventions is amazing. Getting to shake people's hands, look them in the eye, ask questions, get feedback. I love those things. COVID killed that.
Yeah,
Um,
I miss it too, man.
Oh, and it's hard too because I don't go to as many as you because I've got two small children and I try and stay on the East Coast, like within like the tri-state area, like New York,
Yeah.
Pennsylvania, Connecticut, New Jersey, and stuff. I don't stay out overnight. Like my daughter's 3. I've slept in the same house as her every single night. Like that's my
That's
girl.
awesome.
Like so when they get older, that'll change. But um, so being able to interact with people that way and being able to personalize their books is super important. I'm on Twitter at Review Fix Pat. I mainly just post articles on there and stuff like that. The best place to interact with me, like Facebook, is more like for like friends and family and stuff like that. But Instagram, I freaking love Instagram. I am on Instagram. It's like stream of consciousness for me. I post like 40, 50 posts a day. It's like, oh shit, Lethal Enforcers. Remember that game? Boom, I'll post like a screenshot of Lethal Enforcers. Like I do stuff like that. I meet so many readers on on Instagram. So on Instagram, it's Patrick Hickey Jr. One word. You can find me, follow me, friend me, talk to me, and we'll talk about games. As far as my voiceover work, I am the star. I'm the story editor and the voiceover star of the Padre, which is available on Steam, Xbox One, PlayStation 4, and Nintendo Switch. The sequel, the Padre One Shell Straight to Hell, is currently in development. I've done all my voice lines. We're waiting on a whole bunch of like little things, so probably like an early 2021 release for that. I'm also the narrator in the Caillou Offensive, which is available on Steam. It's basically like the visuals of the original Grand Theft Auto, married with like Rampage. It's a lot of fun. So I'm the narrator in that game. Um, I've also, because of NDA, I can't discuss, but there's 3 games that are coming out in 2021 that I'm involved in as a voiceover actor and a writer. One game that I can discuss is a game called Run Die Run Again, which is being designed by Tony Barnes. So if you know your video games, Tony Barnes was the assistant producer and one of the lead designers on Desert Strike, Jungle Strike, Urban Strike, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Star Wars Episode 3, Strider 2014, Medal of Honor 2010. He did a really good Star Trek game on the PC, first-person shooter, really sexy. So it's a first-person platformer, and I'm the voice of like the color commentator during that. So that's a lot of fun. I love Smash TV as a kid, so it's kind of like me invoking like that asshole character. It's great. Um, so yeah, that's pretty much it.
Awesome. Well, guys, follow Patrick Hickey on Twitter and Instagram. He loves him some Instagram. I see quite a few of his photos. And
Sorry.
all that great stuff. It's all good, man. You got cute kids.
Thank you.
Just the other day, you posted something about, I think it was a Game Boy game, Captain America or Avengers or something. And it made me want to play Captain America on the Sega Genesis. So I went and played it. So
That's
keep
all.
it up, man.
Absolutely. That's why I do it. Like I want to have like an ongoing conversation, about
Right.
games all the time. So that's the reason why. So thank you.
All right, Patrick, thanks for being on. And everyone out there, give Patrick a follow. Thank you so much for watching me on my channel. If you could like this video and subscribe to my channel, that would be amazing. All right, Patrick, thank you very much for being on, and I will talk to you later. And guys out there, I will talk to y'all as well, gals as well. See you later. All right, that's a wrap.